Hello, my name is Chris Nelson. My site is evolveconsciousness.org. And tonight I will be presenting The Law of Freedom, Part 7, Reality, Affection, and Universal Justice. Justice. I originally called it Reality, Affection, and then after I did the presentation, I realized that I should have added universal justice to make it more descriptive of what it was about, because reality affection is pretty vague. So it'll be, about universal justice. You'll get that part in there too. So if it interests you, so this is pre-recorded, so I'm going to play it, and if you want to ask questions or whatever, I'll interact with you in the chat. And at the end, if anyone wants to discuss the content, can come on and do a live open roundtable discussion. Otherwise, it'll be done shortly after this 55-minute or so presentation, and then we'll call it an end of the night if no one comes aboard. So that's all good. And without further ado, here we go. Hello, my name is Chris Nelson. My site is evolveconsciousness.org, and this is a presentation for The Law of Freedom, Part 7, Reality, Affection. This is part of an ongoing series of presentations into natural law, the science of morality. Technically, this would be presentation 5 in that series, but because the law of freedom was going to be so big, well, I didn't want to make one video, but it's part 5 in the natural law, science of morality series. So let's get into it. So in this presentation, we're going to be talking about concepts related to Ma'at and Isfet, or APEP, which relate to order and chaos. So I figured I'd bring this back in. I talked about it in my presentation on morality and natural law, the science of morality, part 4, morality. This is the same information, but a different background, different infographic. So in the order and chaos, Ma'at is the order, and the chaos is Isfet or APEP. And APEP is also known as Apophis. And this relates to the concept of apophysis. So you can check out that presentation, and you can just look for the slides for Apophis. It's at the beginning where I go into it to explain how Apophis relates to APEP or Apoph, and Isis correlated with Ma'at. So APEP and Apophis relates to darkness, void, abyss, destruction. And that's the personification of this snake. It's a dark god, not a light god or goddess. It's a dark god represented by a snake. And this correlates with the conception, the cosmic conception of Isfet, which is chaos, injustice, evil, immorality, entropy, involution. And juxtaposed to that, the positive force is Ma'at, the goddess, which you see here with the sword of truth and the scales of Ma'at, the balance of Ma'at, and the wings of Ma'at, representing light, existence, creation. And that correlates with the concept of Ma'at, not the goddess, because it's a force, a concept in the ancient Egyptian philosophy. And that relates to order and justice and good, morality, syntropy, and evolution. And here I have her standing on a plinth or mound of creation, as that's how some of the mythopoetic creation epics, is that Ma'at is the mound that the earth was created on. Because Ma'at, along with Heka, which represented magic, was these were two of the foundational forces in the universe, Ma'at and Heka. So order and magic. And in the backdrop of order is chaos. That's the void, the abyss, the nothingness, and then you have light and existence and creation. Hence the logos of the Bible, let there be light. So that's what this is correlating. And now we can talk about the scales of Ma'at, which Ma'at holds up in that image, but the scales of Ma'at are found, their scales or balance of Ma'at in the Hall of Judgment. So in the underworld, when someone would die, you go into the Hall of Judgment. And the Hall of Judgment would contain the scales, which was, I think, watched over by Anubis. And there was Thoth, who was the scribe of the gods, who would write things down as they were processing in the judgment of the individual. And there was Amit, a 4-part monster creature thing. I think it's hippopotamus body, an alligator face, and I forget. I think there's a lion in there somewhere. Might just be 3, maybe there's 4. I forget what the whole construction was, but nonetheless, the point of the scales were that when you die, well, you get judged, and that's represented by who you are is your heart, the core essence of being, which was on one side of the scale. And this represented your desires and your cares and your drive and ultimately your actions and deed, which result from those desires and cares and that drive. Whatever motivates you is where you're going to end up acting out. And on the right side, we have the feather of Ma'at. So Ma'at's feather of truth and justice, because that's what Ma'at represented, was truth, justice, order, good, morality, etc. So the feather is light. It's not heavy. So it's light, but also Ma'at represented light, as opposed to darkness, which was the corollary for Apep, Apophis, doing battle with Apophis. Apep was Ma'at, representing the force of light. But a feather is also light, as in it's not heavy. So it has that dual meaning with the singular word of light. So that's moral truth. Ultimately, it's not just truth in general, it's moral truth, hence justice. So you have a heart weighed against a feather, and the goal is to be 1 and 1 in balance, right? I have it here. 1 and 1. They have to be equal. They have to be balanced. And if you're not in balance, that means your heart is heavier. Well, then you're heavier than the lightness that you're supposed to be, and matching your heart, your core essence of being, your desires, your cares, your drive, and your actions and your deeds are supposed to equal living in moral truth. And if they're not, then you're weighed down. So here I have a little more of an explanation. And so the scales balance of Ma'at in the Hall of Judgment, or also referred to as Ma'ati and Mahdi, known as the two truths. So the two truths, you can relate it to many different things. Truth and justice, as in follow the truth, or follow the way of moral truth, or face the consequences of justice that comes about as a failure to do that. And it could also be the two truths of the path of good and the path of evil. So follow the moral truth, the path of good, and if you don't follow moral truth, and you go on the path of evil, then you could potentially face justice. So the scale is weighing, judging, and testing. It's testing what you did in your life, what your desires and your care, what you cared about that drove you to do what you did. And then you're being judged because you're being weighed against the feather. These concepts of weighing, judging, and testing relate to this process of being judged for your actions. And ma'at. Creating or supporting evil or immorality weighs you down. You have a heavy heart. When you're heavy-hearted, you're being heavier than the feather of moral truth. The heart is viewed as the fountain of man's deeds. So that's what the heart was viewed as, is that it's the fountain for your deeds, because it's the source from where your deeds come from, ultimately, what you care enough about. You can have many thoughts of things, but only what you ultimately care about and that you desire will drive you and motivate you into an action towards what you care about or what you desire about. So that could be for the good or the evil. Hence the two truths, the path that we can take. So this is the driving motivational source of will and actions. Did you take in moral truth? Did you align, harmonize, and equalize to it at a 1-to-1 ratio? Then you're in equilibrium or balance with moral truth, with ma'at. Your individual core, the heart, or your essence, has welcomed the universal essence of moral truth, ma'at. You have true care. Caring for moral truth, leading to moral actions. You're in equilibrium with moral truth. So the future, what comes after, the future life rewards that you get, after everything after right now is the future that hasn't happened. And when it does happen, well, that's what comes, right? You live by a certain way, you have desires and cares, and that drives and motivates you to engage in certain behavior. And then that behavior will create results in the world, and that will be what is created. But before it's created, it's the future. So your heart is going to lead to the future afterlife rewards you get. Hence the symbolism of being judged after you die. It's all symbolism. So the life after you die is, so there's a lot of layers of symbolism to this. The dying is the hero's journey, where you do the shadow work within and you face the things within you that are wrong, the darkness, the shadow, the evil, the immorality, the demons. So you have a lot of artwork in esotericism, in many traditions, that have slaying the serpent, or slaying the dragon, or standing on the dragon, or riding the dragon, things like that. And that's taming, or slaying, or rising above the lower natures, the things that are in you that maybe you can sublimate and remove, but most likely they're going to remain, but you're just going to choose not to have them drive you, not your lower natures drive you. You're going to seek higher aspirations, higher desires, and higher cares to motivate your behavior in life. So you've risen above them, and you've tamed those lower desires, and you've put them to death, so to speak. So these future or afterlife rewards or consequences are based on past life actions, which is what I just explained. So we put to death what fails to align with ma'at, with truth, with justice, with good, with morality. Karma is action or deed, as I went through in previous parts of this Law of Freedom presentation series. You can take a look at that. And, I think it was the past 3 dealing with karma. What happens as a result of your actions? Are you serving good or evil? Live by moral truth, ma'at, and uphold the positive side of justice, or go against morality and get negative justice by creating evil. So as I explained in in the previous parts of the law of freedom. And we'll see even in more detail. This is the point of this presentation. I have a flowchart to diagram it and show it in more detail, that you're getting justice either way. The laws of nature operate at all times. It's just, depending on your behaviors, you're going to get a positive or negative outcome. Like if you jump off of something tall, well, you could not jump off of something tall. And based on the choices you make, the behavior will produce certain results. And if you jump off of a high place, you're likely going to get hurt. So those are negative consequences you're getting within the operation of the laws of the universe. And you could refer to that as how the law of gravity operates. Or however you want to, if you don't want to use the word gravity, call it whatever you want. Basically, you go up, you come down, right? Everyone generally understands that. Well, however that's happening, you want to argue about it, that's not the point. And if you choose not to jump, well then the positive consequence is that you're going to not be harmed. So the same with morality and justice through the law of freedom. Aggregate morality creates aggregate freedom. Aggregate immorality creates aggregate enslavement. So the choices we make are going to give us an overall positive result or an overall negative result. And I've gone into that in previous parts of the series if you want to take a look at that. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because we have 1-1, a balance, right? The scales are two, one on one side, one on the other side. And we have the Hall of Mahdi, the two truths, truth and justice, good and evil, these concepts that are related. And justice in the tarot is represented, as I've shown with Ma'at in the previous infographic, with Ma'at, with the sword and the balances. So you could look at her as the originator of the concept of the tarot justice card, card 11. So hence again, 11, what is 11? Well, 11 is 1-1. So 1-1, you remove the ratio, a 1-to-1 ratio. Well, that's what the number 11 also represents symbolically. And that's what the tarot justice card is card 11. So you see how all these concepts are connected in terms of the symbolism of one thing on one side. The heart needs to balance one thing on the other side, the feather of truth and justice of Ma'at. So that's what the scales are about. That's continued in the generations of humanity, the future lives of people who've been born afterwards, and created actions and behaviors that led to making the world as it was, and led to making that world that new people were born into and perpetuate that for thousands of years. And so we have the symbolism of the scales. We have the symbolism of the sword. The sword is the defensive side, and it's also the justice punishing side when the judgment happens. And again, when you have 11, well, that's 1 and 1 on 1 and 1. Well, that's, you can look at it as two pillars. So the two pillars of enlightenment, this is from my morality presentation. The left-hand pillar is the self-defense principle, the sacred masculine. And the right-hand pillar is the non-aggression principle, the sacred feminine. And those correlate with concepts of will and thelema. In Greek, and thelema is will, and in Greek, agape is love, but it's the higher form of love. And that's why I put care, because it's true care. I didn't put love, even though that's what it translates as, to not confuse it with what most people associate with love. So it's the higher form of love, care, a true, higher, all caps, care. So in the self-defense principle, Well, I'll start with the default first, the passive side, the non-aggression. You care for right over wrong, to not initiate harm, do the least harm you can because you can. You don't violate rights, non-violence, don't do or support evil. And that's the lost word. And you say no. You know to you creating evil. So that's do no harm. And on the left side is the sacred masculine. Defend yourself and your rights. You act, you stand up, you speak truth, you respond to the initiated harm. So you don't allow harm. The right side is don't do harm. And the left side is, well, you don't want to allow the harm. You respond to the initiated harm. You deal with violence. You enact justice. This is the last word. You smack down the evil. This is saying no to others doing evil, as opposed to just you doing evil. So this deals with reciprocity and balance. And we could look at two pillars of balance: the good or the evil. As I mentioned, the two truths, the path of good and the path of evil. So you live by moral truth, or you face negative consequences. And hence the saying of truth or consequence. Well, that's based on choosing the path of good, or if you choose the path of evil, then face negative consequences. So we have a positive potential, Ma'at, and a negative potential, Isfet. The positive potential is if you want to be treated by others a certain way, then treat them that way. It's a benefit, ideally. Or it can be a harm. If you like the harm and you want to be harmed, like people into, I guess, sadism, or I don't know what it's called. You like to be hurt. So, you could apply this in a flawed way. I'm just trying to be more specific. That's why I put or harm. It's a benefit ideally, but you could be like, oh, well, I want to be treated, I want to be harmed in this way, so I'm going to treat others in that way. So I'm going to get this positive, I view it as a positive, which is harm to me. So anyways, people can twist this. So it's not the proper way to follow it. But we'll just stop the semantics there, and we'll go to the right side. So the negative potential is if you don't want to be treated by others a certain way, then don't treat them that way. Otherwise, if you do treat them in that negative way, then they could reciprocate that and bring back balance to your negative actions as a karma brought back to you. So that's the negative potential. And I've gone into this a bit in the past 3 presentations on karma. And this is otherwise known as the golden rule, or the law of attraction, karma, behavioral cause and effect. You reap what you sow, and you give to get. So if you give good, well, you hope to get back good. And if you give, sorry about that, I keep hitting plate on my desk. If you give the negative, if you give immorality, then don't be surprised to get back harm. If you give harm, if you initiate harm, then you're probably going to receive harm back. You're not going to receive back immorality. You're going to be receiving back karma and balance and justice for your immorality that you initiated. So I've gone into this before, how it works in the karma. I think it was part 4 was the one that had the most detail. Part 5 too. So if you respect the right of others, then you get your rights respected. If you don't respect their rights, then you don't get yours respected. If you violate rights, then you nullify your own right to be free from harm and consequence. At an individual level, reciprocity as the law of attraction is a potential. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get what you give out. You're not guaranteed to receive, to reflect back to you, the same positive or negative that you put out. But in the aggregate, the majority of behavior reflects back as the condition we live. This is according to the law of freedom. It's the condition we all live in, because the majority creates that condition that we all live in. So this is the original one I made in 2014, so 11 years ago. It's called Reality Affection. That's the title of this presentation. Damn, that is bright. the contrast. So the reality affection, the reason it's called reality affection, as you can see at the bottom here, it's reality is affected by our behavior. But it's also affection because, see, it's in the shape of a heart. So when you have affection for something, that's because you care about it, right? This is all about what we care about, underlies everything. Is the whole motto here behind all of natural law, is to have true care. Because what you care, your drives, hence the scales, is what is going to drive your behavior. And whether it's in balance with moral truth or not, well, that's your choice and what you choose to enact as your behavior. So this is the original I made. And I was looking at it and I'm like, well, it's not specific enough. So we have here the left-hand path and the right-hand path. We have the hands in the background. I have care in the middle of the heart in the background. So I wanted to remake it to be more specific. So I won't go into it here. You can pause and take a look or go to the infographic in this presentation or on my site. I have it there in the previous presentation years ago. You can take a look. And here I had a rough design of the new one, what it would look like. So I just wanted to show that. But it got more detailed and more refined as I developed it into more infographics, and it ended up taking a lot more space than it did there. That one was a rough overview, but the finalized one has a lot more information. So where does it start, right? The initial reality affection is when we're talking about the negative side, right? Because we're interested in our condition of our enslavement that we've created through our aggregate actions. And we're also interested in the immorality individuals do. So that's why this starting one is the starting red box here, where there's free will, moral, causal agents. And that's beings with, as a causal agent, you have free will, and a causal agent means you have a high enough level of consciousness to understand, be capable of understanding the concept of morality, of right and wrong, definitively, and be able to communicate about it. So I call them free will, moral, causal agents. Humans belong to that category, and abbreviated as FWMCA. So these are the violators in the red box. They are free will, moral, causal agents, but they are violators. So I have the thought, emotion, action upside down because they're doing immorality. They're inverted. That's the ISFET is also inversion. The inversion concept. And so a violation is created. They initiated harm. Violence, wrong, immorality, evil, chaos. And they're sowing effects into reality. So you can't have immorality unless someone's affected. So the reality affection, how it's affecting reality, is also affecting others. So there's a reaping happening where the effects that others created into reality are received as a reaping on other people who aren't in a red box. They're in a green box. They're just as free will, moral, causal agents who are violated. So the red is when you're a violator, the green is just a neutral, as that force potential within you, that consciousness being as a free will, moral, causal agent. So these are, I'm just putting 3 as an example. It could be 3, it could be 300, 3 billion. So they're violated. There's a personal injustice created. And then we need to ask, well, okay, so that happened to you, right? That was done. Now, how and what are they aggregately sowing in response? So they can engage in behaviors as well. The ones that are violated can engage in behaviors and do sowing of their own to affect reality. So how are they aggregately sowing, and what are they aggregately sowing? And the what would be, are they engaging in self-defense? Or are they just being passive and taking it? And then the how would be, well, how are they enacting that? How are they engaging in the behavior? They're tolerating, accepting, even supporting the immorality being done to them? Or are they fighting against it by trying to educate others about what's going on, understand core principles, so that potentially making the violators physically stop by force could potentially happen if it doesn't happen through education alone. So here we get to the response. So at the top is those free will, moral, causal agents who are violated. How and what are we aggregately sowing in response? Because it's not just them, it's all of us together. Because the concept of it's freedom for all or freedom for none in terms of true freedom. So as one being suffers, we all suffer. That's that same understanding. So the top was the first box is the continuation of the previous infographic where everyone's violated, but then they're part of all free will, moral, causal agents. And we're all potential responders to violations. It's not just those who are violated who are in this. There's other people in reality who can also care about injustices being created and act to rectify them or make them stop. Hence, that's the goal of what we need to do in our world, is to come together and get people to fight either through the information war at first, and eventually to make others stop if they don't want to stop through us saying no or trying to convince them. Eventually, physical defense is required. So all of us together, we're responders. So we have free will choice and we have care. Now, how we're going to use our free will choice, again, is based on that heart, the symbol of the heart, our desires, our cares, what drives us and motivates us. That's our affection to affect reality, the motivation and the drive. So our affection, our care, is going to affect reality based on that care and what we choose as behavior. So we have a left-hand path and a right-hand path. And this is the how. How are we aggregately sowing in response? Well, we can care for truth, and we can have unity with truth and morality, and we can engage in right action. And what action we output will be that we reciprocate karmic debt. We engage in a rectification process. So the karmic debt that is accrued by those who are violating, well, we can reciprocate that harm as a deterrent. So you hit me, well, I'm going to hit you back. Show you, hey, don't do that. I'm not just going to take it. So that applies in different ways where there's a reciprocation. This is the balancing of returning the karma, not letting the negative karma stay at those who were violated, but returning the karma back to the violators to say no with teeth, the sacred masculine principle, and make them stop. So this is where chaos of evil, not tolerated. It's not accepted, not condoned, not normalized, not standardized. And that goes in as input into the reality processing mechanism of all the laws of nature. Right? Everything that's allowed to happen happens because there are laws of nature which make it allowed. I can't, go like this and make my hand turn into a cat, and then I don't have fingers anymore. Now I have a cat as a hand. That's not how the laws of nature work. So, as a corollary, contradistinction to the right-hand path, we have the left-hand path. So there's a lack of care of moral truth. It could be apathy or dark care. I've gone into that in my presentation for Funnel 4, truly caring about being enslaved. So there's lack of care for moral truth, a disunity from natural law, where we engage in wrong action. Again, could be apathy, or it could be dark care because you want. You know what you're doing, and you're going to do it, even though you know it's wrong. And as a result, we don't reciprocate karmic debt. There's no rectification. Oh, sorry, yeah. So this, forget that last 10 seconds. This is about only the lack of care, where it's our response to what we're going to do about being violated or others being violated. Well, there's a lack of care for moral truth. So we're disunited from natural law. Even if we know it ourselves, we could be limited in what we can do physically. But we can do the great work of teaching natural law. And that wouldn't be a right action. But we're still disunited in our ability to enact it, because we would just be a fly getting squashed, and it would be meaningless, our action, to try to oppose this huge force all by ourselves as one person. So there's things we can do, which is the great work to try to bring about that force of numbers, a quantity required so that things can change. That's all according to the law of freedom. The aggregate changes, then the reality will change based on the aggregate of people, whatever direction they go in, whether it's to the path of good, more of the good, or more of the evil. So when we have lack of care, well, we don't reciprocate karmic debt, and there's no rectification. So that's how things got to where they are now. And the chaos of evil is tolerated, accepted, condoned, normalized, and standardized. And that's what we have now. That's what government is. That's what the belief in authority is. It's been like this for thousands of years, where they violate rights of individuals, and it's tolerated and accepted, condoned, and it's normalized and standardized as the way of living in a society. And there's some societies that can be more or less towards the good, or more or less towards the evil in their alignment. But everywhere, there's not true freedom. So us doing this, of tolerating or not tolerating it, well, that would mean the inaction is an action, is an action of non-action. It's still an action. And the action of not tolerating it, well, either way, that's what reality receives. So if someone creates a violation, and then you're negatively affected, so you have a negative karma on you, because it's just an action or deed, and the consequences. So the consequences on you that it's a negative. Now the karma stays with you. And that's the karma we have, is that we're tolerating it. So it's staying with us because we're not sending it back. And that's the way the law of freedom operates. Because the law of freedom is going to take, well, are people going to have the action of inaction, or are they going to have the action of doing something? And all these things are permitted by the laws of the universe. And the law of freedom is the description, is a categorization for the application of this process related to the morality of our behavior, leading to freedom, greater or lesser degrees of freedom, or greater or lesser degrees of slavery, overall in the aggregate of society. So again, we cared enough, or we didn't care enough, inaction or action. Right, we didn't care enough, that's an inaction. We cared enough, we took action. So in the law of freedom, that's the input, is our behaviors, and reality is just going to process that behaviors, whatever we engage in, that manifests in reality, and then there's changes in reality. That's the output that we generate, but it's generating through the laws of nature that allow it to be possible. If it wasn't possible, it wouldn't be happening. So slavery is possible, and it's only created by the choice of free will beings, whether they have the moral causal agent capacity or not. So the output is, again, the right-hand path or the left-hand path. And the right-hand path is based on caring enough, and we're not going to tolerate it. So the right-hand path is order reciprocity. This is the Ma'at symbolism. So we're aligning with Ma'at, or we are aligning with Apep or Isfet in our behaviors. But the result that we get is also going to be based on our alignment. So we're going to get that order reciprocity, that it's going to create order, it's going to restore order. The violations are not going to be tolerated, so a chaos was created, but we're going to restore it. An injustice was created, and we're going to bring back by justice. We're going to bring back the norm of justice. We're going to bring back freedom by applying consequences and getting a repayment for the debt. So that creates personal justice, and justice is enacted, and evil is kept at bay. Freedom is preserved in an area. Order, aggregate karma, is what manifests in the aggregate. So an individual was violated, or a group of people violated, then you bring back justice for that individual or that group of people. So this is the conduction of direct negative karmic consequences, feedback to the violators. It's localized karma. Oh, I forgot to clean up my infographic and get rid of the delayed and near instant or delayed. Because I was mulling that over and then I decided to get rid of them, but then I left it in as like, maybe I'll figure out a way to make more sense of it. And yeah, apologies for that. So this is an individual reaping where, and I've gone into this in more detail, this specific part in terms of the concept and the terminology of karma. So the individual reaping is when what was sent back to the violators, the violatees, the people who were violated by the violators, well, the violators get sent back a consequence, and it's direct negative karmic consequences that are feedback. It's not a one-way street that just goes from them to the violated. It's a 1-to-1 ratio where the negative was created and then it's sent back so that they can feel the negative and they can have consequences applied as a deterrent to not do it, and potentially as a debt collection, a debt repayment mechanism. So the karma is localized. Instead of the karma, negative karma is created to someone who's violated, and then it's sent back localized here. Now, if you don't engage in that process of returning the negative that was received, that was initiated by the violators, and then you're going to return it, it localizes it in the end. So that there was a negative karma created here, the negative consequences that you felt that, but it was returned. So it ends up being localized. This is what I mean by the localized karma. So that's not too confusing. Now, if we didn't care enough, and we go on the left-hand path, where chaos reciprocity. So because chaos was created, and then chaos remains, and then they keep creating it because there's no negative sent back to get them to stop. So they can just keep doing it, and they're just going to keep doing it. Hence, the world we have now, which does have some justice mechanism, but it's very flawed because people are ignorant of morality. And that's the whole reason it's here in the first place, as a controlling mechanism, because people don't want personal responsibility and they don't want to engage in self-control and self-mastery. You know, that's the tarot 1 card, the magician. Self-mastery, self-governance, self-dominion, enlightenment. People lack that because they don't have the knowledge. They weren't taught. Everything, parents fail them, education fails them. They're not being raised because the parents aren't raised. Anyways, that's all side topics we can get into. Now, this is the Apep Isfet symbolism again, carrying on from the path of Apep Isfet, and you're going to allow that as a reciprocity mechanism. Instead of sending things back, well, you're just keeping it there, and then they're just going to create more and more and more negatives. So the injustice remains, and evil gains a foothold because no one's stopping the evil. So evil is going to be like, all right, I got free reign. I can just keep doing it. I can just keep violating and violating and no one's stopping me. Well, why would I stop? I'm benefiting from this. So I'm going to keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. There's no consequences to me. Why would I stop? I'm doing it for a reason. There's a benefit that I initially desired and cared for in my corrupt, isfet, dark, chaotic desires. Well, I wanted something and I got it. And it was immoral and I violated rights, but no one stopped me. So I'm going to keep doing it, keep doing it, and keep doing it. So evil gains a foothold and slavery increases in an area. And then we get the chaos as the aggregate karma. Because if they do it to one person, then they do it to more people and more people and more people and more people, and everyone lets it happen, well then that's your condition that you live in. You live in a condition of immorality being done to everybody. And that's our current condition because of the belief in authority, where some are believed to have the moral right to do wrongs and other people don't have the right because they don't actually have the right to do those wrongs. But there's a certain class of people, oh, well, you're allowed to do them because you're authority and magically you're allowed to do it. So some have rights and others don't. And that's Animal Farm. All animals are created equal, but some animals are more equal than others. So then you have this class of people who can do things that other people aren't allowed to do because it's immoral and you're not allowed to do it. Or they're going to make you do things that are immoral or prevent you from doing things that are moral that you do have a right to do. So as opposed to the corrective path where it creates personal justice for an individual, the left-hand path leaves personal injustice. So it's personally unfair and collectively fair. So I'm going to explain that when I get to the middle part of the infographic and how this is all justice, as I mentioned earlier and in previous parts of the Law of Freedom presentation. So instead of conduction of the direct negative karmic consequences, you're going to conduct it right back to them. Well, the ones who did the violations, now they're insulated. They're not receiving direct negative karmic consequences being feedback to the violators. The karma, the negative karma they created, karma is an action or deed. So they created a negative immoral action or deed. It affected one or more people over here. So the negative consequences of your actions were that it affected these people. And these people are negatively affected. Chaos was created, a violation of their rights. And karma remains there. Because when you're doing it to everybody and no one stops it, well, the karma isn't sent back to the violators in a rectification process to localize it back to them and make them stop. No, instead they just keep repeating it and it ends up everywhere across society. So there's an insulation of direct negative karmic consequences feedback to the violators. Karma is dispersed to all. And this is a collective reaping. So in the positive pathway, it's an individual reaping where direct karmic consequences are going to be brought back to the violators to make them stop. It's direct on them individually as a response. When that is not engaged in, what you have is a collective reaping overall. When the behavior is that the evil, the immorality, the violators are violating everyone because they weren't stopped the first time, so they just kept repeating it. And then whatever means, whether it's linguistic or sorcery, magic of the mind through words and getting people to accept ideas as legitimate, like the belief in the legitimacy of authority, or other means. If people are going to accept it either way overall in that society, whether they're afraid or they think it's right, and they falsely believe it's right, it's still a collective reaping. So no matter which side you choose, overall we do it to ourselves by action or inaction response. So this is universal justice, as I termed it. The concept of a universal justice. Either way, this is justice. It's not going to be personal justice, right? In personal justice, the violators are the ones who are going to get the justice back to them. So that's why here, when you go to the blue path, well, who's getting justice, right? We're talking about the law of freedom, justice in purple. So we have universal justice overall, is this whole thing. But who's getting the justice applied? Well, when you choose the right-hand path and the violators get stopped and get punished and they get consequences, then the justice is applying to those violators. They are getting justice applied. But when that's not done, then the justice is being applied to everyone. Not in terms of personal justice, not that people deserve necessarily being violated, but they're going to deserve continuing to allow it and continuing to create that condition that they live in, where it's the condition of reality, where everyone is being violated. And that's where overall we do it to ourselves by action or inaction. Because you chose, maybe not as an individual, but overall, right? You have one person versus a million, what are you going to do? Well, you're not going to change the condition just yourself. You need numbers. This is why we have to influence people and educate them and change their mind, the mental realm, to then change their thoughts and what they care about, that will then lead to their actions and what they do in the world, right? So it's not a personal justice that you got violated and that's justice that you got violated. No, that's not what this means. It's an injustice. But because you're choosing to leave the personal injustice, what you're getting is an aggregate condition of evil gaining a foothold and being allowed to repeat its behavior. So aggregately, that behavior is going to repeat and it's going to affect everyone or nearly everyone. And that's the justice of the law of freedom. Either way, there's justice in a sense of justice, not in the justice in the way that most people think of it as justice, as a more narrow, colloquial standard definition of justice, where a violator does something and they receive consequences for their violation, right? That's how most people view justice. And yes, that is an accurate way. That is the optimal, ideal way for justice to be applied, is that justice goes back to the violator and only they have the justice for their injustice. But when this has failed to be engaged, I'm just explaining how the law of freedom operates in terms of justice and what's just. Because everyone is too cowardly to stand together and unite and stop the violators from violating, well, that's the justice you created for yourself according to the law of freedom, according to the way the universe actually works, by allowing whatever we create, by allowing whatever behaviors get created. Well, it's up to free will. I've gone into this in karma and free will. I think that's part 5 in this series. It's going to continue unless free will makes it stop. So free will creates the immorality. Free will creates the negative karma. Free will creates the chaos, the injustice. Well, you need free will to counter that, to bring back balance, the 1-to-1 ratio. Because that's what the justice is about, the scales of Ma'at, the justice card of the tarot with the sword and the scales. It's the 1-to-1 ratio of evil is done, you don't tolerate it, you bring back the negative karma by making them face the consequences of their actions, and you put it down to make them not repeat it. And if you choose not to do that, then you're getting a universal, the negative aspect of the universal justice, where we are overall doing it to ourselves, not as an individual, 1 against a million or 1 against 1,000, 1 against 100, a few 100,000, okay? Against the police everywhere and everything. It's a losing battle. You can't do it on a one-on against them. It requires numbers. Everything's about numbers. The principle of quantity, as I call it. The principle of numbers. You can call it the principle of the majority. Many different things. Whatever the majority are going to do, whether it's right or wrong, whether it's good or evil, moral or immoral, it doesn't matter in terms of what's going to be created in reality. The way reality, the way our human world, the way a society, the way an area is going to experience a condition is based on what the majority do. That's it. And that's how the law of freedom is operating. This is what the universal justice is about, is that it's justice because overall, people are not doing anything about it. So it remains and it continues. And that's universal justice. It's not the personal justice being created, but it's personal justice operates within universal justice, right? The symbolism of Ma'at and the sword and the scales, that's truth and justice, right? Truth or consequence, truth and justice. That still applies in the personal sense, and that's within the umbrella of universal justice. But universal justice also has this negative side where inaction, cowardice, fear, laziness, apathy, ignorance all play a part. Those 5 killers of consciousness are the apathy, ignorance, laziness, cowardice, and ultimately all comes from fear as like a force or power within us, within our mindsets that's driving it all. Those 5 aspects are what is leading to this negative aspect of universal justice. So I think I've done a pretty good job explaining the infographics, and that's the end of my presentation. So thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate your time and attention, and hopefully you gain something of value. And there will be a part 8 and maybe a part 9. I'm not sure. Definitely a part 8, probably a part 9, maybe a part 10. I don't know. The law of freedom one is I'm going really deep into it, and yeah, it's really big. So far we're up to 7 hours in total, and definitely going to get to 8 hours. So thank you for your time and attention. Take care. Peace. All right. So that's the end of the presentation. You're welcome, Nick. And yeah, I'll do a video ninja session. I'll create that for anyone who wants to go on and talk about it. If you have questions or you want to add some more information about any part, then feel free to come on by. I'm just gonna get this started up. I did it wrong the first time. This time everything should be good. Microphone, virtual camera. All right. So here is the link. I'll give that a few minutes, and yeah, we'll see if anyone wants to talk about anything. If not, all good. And we'll just end the stream there. And yeah, so like I said in the presentation, the reason I did this, as Nick pointed out, the visual, adding the visual flow of how things function to get from one causal part in the whole mechanism of the law of freedom to the next, and how it flows together in like a situational, in a scenario. So that situation where there's violators who violate, and then there's a cause and effect, a sowing and a reaping, and then goes through reality, and reality processes all that, and then it produces the output. Well, in my original infographic, I guess I'll just add that. I can talk about that a little bit. Boy, I just gotta find it. So I'm talking about the one I showed originally related to. There's nothing there. Oh, it's the wrong folder. There we go. So the image I showed, yeah, this one, that I'd originally done was showing that in the middle part where reality is affected, and then it comes in based on what we care to do. And then there's a chaos reciprocity or an order reciprocity. And then I called it the reality buffer, conduction or insulation from the feedback of actions. And then that's going to have the reaping on us based on natural law. Because we, in all this process, we have a choice of what we are going to do, but that doesn't mean that our choices are going to result in optimal outcomes for us. Because whatever choices we create into reality, well, those produce effects, and then those effects, we have no choice to experience them. So we have the choice in what to create, but not in what we experience after we've created it based on our choice. And I just found that, like, it did a good enough job, 11 years ago when I first created it. But I felt that the way I'm doing the natural law presentation, I can add more and make it more clear. And that's why I did that. I added more information, made it more clear and more detailed to understand all the flow of the processes more clearly and in more detail. Oh, I got someone. I was about to close things up. All right. Let's bring in our guest here. So I'm guessing. Got someone. Guessing this is Nick. I was about to close things up. All right. Let's bring in our guest here. Hey, you're on. Well, I'm guessing. Got someone. You need to follow in the. Close things and up. You need to mute. You need to put your earphones on because I can hear myself, so the stream is hearing me, and then afterwards,
right. Can you hear me
it's hearing you. Yeah. I need to look into that window that you joined. There's going to be the audio for us that we talk in separate outside of the stream that then goes into the stream. So you need to put earphones on and not have it go through your mic. So I don't think I'm hearing it anymore. So that's good. So if you want to go ahead and talk. Earphones on and not have it go through the... Oh, now I can hear it again.
Yeah, sorry, man. I just couldn't hear anything. I can only hear you through YouTube, so I'm not sure if you're going to get some sound issues.
So I don't think I'm hearing it anymore. So that's good. So if you want to go ahead and talk.
Oh, hey, I'm Nick. Nice to meet you, mate. I sort of pop in. Thanks for the presentation.
Earphones on and not have it go through the... Oh, now I guess in YouTube it's fine.
Yeah, sorry, man. I just couldn't hear anything. I can only hear you through YouTube, so I'm not sure if you're going to get some sound issues.
So I don't think I'm hearing it anymore.
I'll have to. I'm trying to sort the issue here. Or may have to drop out until I can solve it next time. I know that you can hear me. So my question, I'm Nick. Nice to meet you. I just started to pop in. Thanks for the presentation. I can't hear you, but my question was around the consequences. And I know that you talked about the law of numbers and the majority. So I guess my question is, when there have been large transgressions against humanity, pick any kind of thing. And one of the questions that came up in one of the videos I did was, my friend asked me, let's say something like 0 point energy or exotic energy or free energy, however you want to phrase it, has been hidden from the world or deliberately kept from the world. How would you, what are the consequences for that? And especially with the way that technology is going now, and it's being used against people, whether from mind control or without their consent, and then we don't have the necessarily the proper ways of, like, yeah, like what are the consequences? What's like a just consequence, I guess, is my question, in terms of dealing with that. Thanks for the presentation, and I'll see if I can do better with the with
Yeah,
this
do you
software
have
next time.
earphones? All right. Well, in the future, if anyone comes on, you should wear earphones just in case there's a feedback with the microphone coming in and then it goes into the stream and then we hear like a delay repetition. So the consequence, well, who's going to apply the consequence? Is there going to be a consequence? From who? Are people going to apply consequence? Where's the energy? If people are going to become aware of it, that it's actually there, this technology, then what are they going to do about it? Are they going to do something about it? Are they not going to do anything about it? So let's say everyone becomes aware, hey, there's free energy. Look here, here's a device. And then the police come and then they take it away. And people are like, hey, well, what? We want that free energy. And then they just say, hey, we want that free energy. And then what do they do afterwards? Are they going to apply consequences to the people who took it away and hid it? And if they're not, well, then nothing else is going to happen because they're not doing anything to make anything happen. So the people who are doing the wrong to hide, for example, free energy devices, nothing is going to happen to them because no one's making anything happen to them. It all depends on people taking action. So I went over this in 2 presentations ago. I think it was the Law of Freedom, part 5, Karma and Free Will. So you can take a look at that, and it has more detail on the arguments for why you need free will involved to make consequences be applied. Hey, Brandon, how's it going?
Howdy, howdy. Great presentation.
Thanks. Did you want to talk about something or add some more points or more detail or stuff that I maybe missed or anything? What's on your mind?
Yeah, when you was talking about the 1-to-1 scale, I think that's a great representation. Of course, when it comes down to all of this, when it comes to being grounded in reality, when it comes to applying these concepts, because as you was explaining that, then I thought about morality and freedom, and how they are both on a harmonic pattern, and as one raises how the other raises, and the same as morality how decreases, then we're going to start creating the conditions for slavery to manifest. So that right there have popped up in my mind. But just that whole aspect when you brought up the whole 1-to-1, and then the how tarot card, just when it comes to explaining these, how dynamics, because how Mark, he always talked about when it comes to explaining what a right is, then boil it down to just, two people on a island, and then you scale it down to this 1-to-1, how conversation. Does this individual have a right to take from this other individual? Then two, how when it comes to applying, how consequences, you can also get that, how better how representation. But of course, you hammered on the free will aspect of it, because I think that's what a lot of people forget when it comes to these topics of karma. We just think that it's going to come in the next life, when the weighing of the heart could also be applied to the now too. When it comes to true justice, and holding people held accountable and rectifying her wrong behaviors. We're so conditioned to think that it's going to come in this next life, or it's going to come like automatically, but we don't really apply it to the actual now. And how unifying and coming together, and realizing that we may have to actually, be the ones who do the right thing with like right self-defensive force, taking a true stand. That's something that a lot of people always seem to forget about.
Yeah,
And it may even mean, like things getting physical.
yeah. Eventually, yeah. That's it requires numbers. Otherwise, you just get squashed like a bug if you're.
Yeah,
I'm a
yeah,
one
yeah,
man
definitely
army and I'm
requires
gonna take
numbers.
them all on. Well,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
enjoy your effort, but you're in your right, but everyone else is gonna see it as wrong, and
You're
they're
lying to
make
yourself
they're
if
just
you
gonna
think you're gonna
squash you
do
like a
something.
bug. So your effort's
Right,
gonna be amount to nothing in the end. The goal we wanna make it do something, create the change, and if you're just gonna go one against 100,000, well, you're not gonna do anything. And
right, yeah,
yeah, what you mentioned is what Nick had asked. This idea that I intuited as the mindset of like people think that for example, the free energy or whatever, and what are the consequences they're gonna get? Well, nothing. If people aren't gonna give them consequences, like you're stealing the free energy that we could have, okay. Let's
yeah,
say that that's happening. Well, what consequences are gonna have? Divine will is this going to be punishment from on high? No, it's not going to happen. Maybe that could happen, but that's not what we see happening in the world. That's never what we've seen. All we have are
right,
fictional stories of people creating stories about, believe in this religion because there's this power that's going to punish you and it's going to intervene and when you do bad things and make bad things happen to you if you do bad, and then if you do good, you'll get good in return. It's all these ideas that people just believe in, but there's no verification of it in reality ever in existence. Has it ever happened? And it's just
superstition.
always, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
superstition.
Yeah, superstition was one of the terms that Manly P. Hall had used for like a form of ignorance that would bring down mankind. Yeah, because you start to believe in all of these, like crazy things and wishful thinking, and then your minds get stuck all out, like in hell out land, and then you aren't, based in reality. Yeah,
Yeah, that belief, that's a killer of the beliefs. And yeah, especially the superstitious ones, I guess those are always related to external forces that you can't verify, because you could have superstitions on other things like
yeah,
you know knock on wood 3 times or something, these other things, these superstitions. So it's not directly related to God, but there's this other power that's going to make things happen because you
yeah,
did something.
yeah,
So knock on wood 3 times and
yep,
it'll allay and appease the higher forces of something. And yeah,
yeah.
these
And if you don't do it
superstitions.
that way, then yeah, it throws you off your whole rhythm. Yeah.
Yeah, these silly
Okay.
things people believe in to try to, it goes back to this trying to make sense of the world and um, making it be ordered in some way, which is what I talked about in that
Yeah.
the karma, the first one on part 4, I think it was on karma. But there's this idea of there's going to be order generated for free will creating disorder. There's going to be some other force that's going to come and clean up our mess and, solve our problems for us that free will created, but it doesn't require free will because there's this other thing that's going to come in and, well, it's going to establish order, and then people derive their own beliefs of how to reestablish order in their lives and knock on wood or do this other thing. Or, there's one with the salt. I think it's like if the salt shaker falls down, you got to throw it over, you got to do one shake over your shoulder or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
I heard something. Yeah,
yeah,
like
that's
kind of similar to
people in my
that.
family have
That's
told me that in the past.
yeah.
And
Like
it's
I
like,
mean, like that's kind of crazy. And you just throw salt like over your shoulder,
because it's bad
like you
luck
don't
if you
even.
spilt the
Yeah.
salt shaker. Like, what? And like, you break a mirror, it's 7 years bad luck. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
It's just a way to just yeah.
try to rationalize, I don't know, try to create situations of something's going to bring you disorder in addition to the disorder that was created. There's going to be an additional chaotic element
Right.
that's going to come back and bring more chaos in your life because some unfortunate thing of breaking a mirror happened. Or you got to
Right. Yeah.
reestablish order because salt fell down, so put it back over your shoulder, and order's going to come back because you just created a situation that the universe doesn't like, and oh my god, there's going to be bad luck coming to you. Better watch
Yeah.
out.
Man, how the crazy things we believe in and tell ourselves, and like that's the crazy thing. You know how when it comes down to it, is the things that we tell ourselves that aren't true. Cause that's what it all boils down to.
And Nick says mind control technology, for example. People think because they haven't given consent, the answer is locking up the transgressors who created the mind control technology, which will also likely never happen and not the answer. Well, yeah, I
Yeah,
agree that it's probably never going to happen.
we,
And is
we
it the
just saw
answer?
this.
What?
We just saw this. Like during the whole fake pandemic.
Well, that's
I
what I
mean,
was
how many
thinking of
people
too.
got like how many people got locked up?
No, that's what I was
So,
thinking. Like all the stuff on, we're going to prosecute Fauci. And I'm like, man, that guy's never going to go to jail. Man, if he
yeah,
goes to jail, I'll be super surprised. But
right. Like,
jail is the
nah,
interim mechanism for how this society currently manages and agrees and supports a system of managing immoral activity or even non-immoral activity, which is moral, that has been criminalized. And for some things that are immoral, that's what they do is they support this thing of prison as a way to punish people. But I don't view it as viable. The people pay, they get their money stolen from to pay for people to go and be taken care of in an incarceration unit, which doesn't reform them in any way. There's no moral education because there's no moral
right. Yeah,
education
yeah,
anywhere in society, not true morality. So how are you going to be rehabilitated? They just makes more hardened criminals in most cases because they get mixed in with people who, like in general, mixed in with people who are more immoral, and people can just get disillusioned and disheartened, and they try to fit into that sub society to survive, and then
yeah,
they become changed as a result. But yeah, the greater white collar criminals, they got their own prison, lower level prisons, and I guess it's more of a country club in some cases. And yeah, anyways, all these criminals, the criminal injustice system that might prosecute people, might let them go, prosecute people who've done no harm to anyone else. They just
yeah.
break stupid laws.
And then they'll let their friends go. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. If
but
you
that's
got the money,
justice.
you can probably
Yep.
get away with it. That's all you need
Yeah.
is money.
Oh yeah. Because it's all about legality and not morality.
Yeah,
you know.
and
So
tricks in the legal system, and you didn't have the right chain of evidence, so then, oh well, we're dismissing that from court. The jury's not allowed to hear it, but it is evidence. But because it wasn't handled because of some stupid procedure like a robot, the
yeah,
robots didn't
yeah,
do their robotic protocol jobs right. Then, oh well, the evidence that is there, well, it's going to be ignored, even though it's evidence that proves the crime, but it's going to be ignored, and then you
yeah.
get off because
You didn't follow procedure
technicalities. Yeah,
to get it. Yeah, yeah. Use it evidence in court. So, but hey, that's what we gonna continue to get because that's what people want.
yeah, they want that system of irresponsibility passing the buck off to someone else. So Nick is saying, so in dealing with large-scale transgressions, what is an appropriate consequence for those that did it? And how can people focus their free will appropriately in the right direction on such matters? Well, you need a quantity of people to do anything. Like I mentioned in the presentation, it doesn't matter if it's a mob that's going to hang someone who did nothing wrong and they're a scapegoat or they're being blamed, or if it's a mob that's going after someone who actually did something wrong.
Yeah,
The mob is the majority and they're going to make happen whatever they make happen. So in large-scale transgressions, which is the world we're living in, the appropriate consequence is that, so one level is people get together and you say, you're going to stop. And if you try it again, you're going to be taken out of existence. That's a nicer first level response to do, where you give them the opportunity to change. And that's something that in the Doctor Who series, sci-fi series that he would often do is give these monsters or whatever evildoers, it gives them the opportunity to back down, and if they don't, then he would like punish them in some way.
Yeah.
I view that
He's using
as
his. I'm sorry.
go ahead.
He's using his. He's using his words first to like let the universe know, like, hey, I'm giving this person or like this individual one last chance to do the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah, to stop on your own and cease and desist, and then don't do it
Yeah.
again, and then they don't stop. So then he like, I don't know, obliterates them or something with his sonic screwdriver or whatnot. I don't remember specific cases, but that's always something that struck with me. So you can give people a chance. I'm not saying they deserve it, but it's something that people can choose to do. You can give them a one-off. Okay, now we got the numbers, and we can explain it to you, and then you can either accept it or you can still reject it and still think you're in the right and still think you have a right to do it. Well, then you're just going to get taken out. Or you don't even go that route and you just take them out anyways. And that would be within your rights as well, as the majority, as the mob of people just going after those who've done these large-scale transgressions. Either way is valid. One is more, you give them a chance to change, which is what Doctor Who would do. He would give them the chance to turn from their evil ways. And that's something you can do. I've seen it in many movies or TV shows, and it can be beneficial for people who do want to change. They can later go on to provide great value, having changed their ways. But some of them, you don't want to give them the chance because they're just going to lie, and then they're going to use that opportunity for you to have backed down to come back at you with their psychotic form of revenge. It's not a justified revenge. It's not a moral revenge. But because you stop them, and their psychopathic mindset is, how dare you stop me? I'm going to make you suffer even more. And those are the instances where we got to, I guess in certain circumstances it might be hard to recognize it, but if you can recognize that someone is of that mindset and they're deceptive and they're just playing you, and that you're just going to have worse results in the end. And one of the worst representations of this, I like Marvel comics because they actually kill the bad guys, and DC, they're a bunch of coward losers who don't kill. And the worst one is like Superman, because with all his power and he's all like do-goody and he's all like, well, they can't hurt me, so I'm going to give him a chance. I'm going to just stop him and we'll lock him away. And, Batman would do the same thing. And then they just escape and create harm and kill more people and capture him and put him away, and then escapes, murders more people. So this is the instance where if you just eliminated them the first time, then they wouldn't have escaped, murdered more people to be caught, to escape, to murder more people. You would have prevented all those future lives from dying if you would have just eliminated the evil from existence. But because it's DC Universe retarded bullshit of cowards, it doesn't happen. So that happens with Superman, it happens with Batman. More people lose their lives because the so-called hero didn't do what was necessary.
Right, yep.
Took evil out of existence.
Yeah. Do what was necessary, yep. That's what a lot of people, have struggled with. Doing what is necessary.
That's what people can do. You can do that on a one-on-one basis. You can do it when we have the numbers. And, you can be lenient and give people a chance to reform or not, because their actions are actionable. And, that's all morally justifiable.
Agreed. Agreed.
Cool.
Yeah.
Did you think of anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Nah, because I wasn't going to keep it held too long. I just wanted to come on and say that. But yeah, I really do think that the whole, like Maya and the Ishvet is one of the best ways for people to understand this, like from the symbolic nature. That's what really helped me, open up to this. especially through your work and just really learning that symbolism, because you're talking about a core truth that has been talked about in like so many different cultures and like so many different aspects that you can come to know, from so many different forms of motifs. So
Yeah. It's a really helpful. It's deep too when you get into the hall of judgment and the death symbolism and the new life, the afterlife you get after you get judged and all that stuff. Yeah, it's may become confusing to decode, but yeah.
yeah. Oh, and hell, by the way, man, you got me with that white image.
What?
No, hell, your heart picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. I said, hell, when I said when you turned it on, I said my monitor, yeah, it blinded the shit out of me. So
Because everything is like dark. I go more with the dark theme, and then that one is like, boom! I'm like, whoa! Everything was
yeah,
dark, and then the brightness
yeah,
came out. I was like,
yeah,
shit, that's
yeah.
fucking
Yeah, I'm the same
conscience
way.
change.
Yeah, hello, those dark themes, but yeah.
Yeah, I read everything on black text on white background because
hmm
the inverse screws with my eyes, and it makes my vision go all like weird, unless it's proper calibration where it's the contrast isn't too high between a dark background and the light text. But if it's a black background and white text, I can only read it for like a minute, and then like shit starts to go fuzzy, and it like
Yeah.
fucks with my eyes. That's too much contrast.
Okay.
Yeah. So if it's like a dark gray with a white or a soft white, then the contrast isn't as bad. And like the way Discord has it, they knew what they were doing with the color setup. But in general, I read white backgrounds with black text. I prefer that. I know it's popular now, the dark mode, but I don't do dark mode except for my presentations because I like the bright colors for things. They pop more. All right, I guess we'll end it there. So thanks for coming by and adding your inputs and additional insights into the presentation material. Appreciate it. And we'll be back next week with the Great Work Launchpad 11, I think it is, Shadow Work 9, dealing with learning how to think. So that should be some good material to get into. People need to learn about.
Thought criminals.
That's us for the thought criminals. All right, thanks, Brandon.